Welcome into the conversation. It is your host, Adrienne Lawrence. Today, I'm bringing you an inventor who also happens to be the founder and CEO of Alice Technologies, Rene Marcos. Thank you for joining us, Rene.
Thanks for having me here, Adrienne.
Yes, so right now, the current housing crisis in terms of the lack of housing, also affordability, it is a major crisis right now in our society, especially as we look right down the barrel of what appears to be a recession. And it only seems like things are getting worse, but I know that Alice Technologies has an answer for us.
It does. We've invented the world's first generative construction simulator. And so it's a technology that can take a construction project and then simulate it in millions of different ways. It can build a building or a residential home or whatever it is that you're constructing 6 million different ways. 1 crane, 2 cranes, overtime to overtime, to find the most efficient way to go about it.
Wow, that definitely sounds like something that would help us address this issue. And in terms of layman thoughts, in terms of on the ground, I guess, how could people use this to really address the crisis?
Well, since 2019, housing prices have gone up by about 58%. Lumber alone has gone up by about 260%. Our technology helps you reduce the cost of labor and equipment, which is about 40% of the total, by somewhere around 13% on average. It also helps you speed up the speed of construction by about 17%. And so that's what the technology can do.
Wow, that's incredible. That seems huge, game changing. And so I guess what are next steps in terms of getting this on the market and getting it to hopefully heal some of this problem out there?
Well, we're already on the market. We're working with some of the world's largest construction companies. We tend to do a lot of infrastructure projects around the world. My background is I've sort of been through 2 wars and seen the destruction that the lack of infrastructure can bring to a society. And so we've been focused on that, but we're releasing the residential module of Alice in the next few months. And that's, I think, going to address the lower end or the smaller sort of single family home market need.
All right, so you're looking to lower that need in terms of addressing the issue when it comes to single family homes, and also, again, being already on the market. But in terms of really getting there, in terms of the residential needs, what necessarily needs to happen?
Well, for us, what we're doing is it's a technical question. We're releasing something that actually speeds up the setup of a project, because most residential homes are actually very similar. What we're developing is an add-on that will allow you to actually set these projects up in less than an hour versus several days or several weeks that we need today. And so upon releasing this, you'll be able to sort of take a single family home, put it into the system. It'll ask you 15, 20 questions and pop out a simulated, optimized construction project for you.
Wow. And so, as I also understand it, so by reducing global construction costs by some 25%, millions more people will have access to healthcare infrastructure and also elevating their standard of living. How is that specific toward healthcare?
How's that specific towards healthcare? What Alice does, and we're working on some of the biggest infrastructure projects in the world. We're working on the HS2, for example. We're working on there's the high-speed rail in the UK. It's a $170 billion job. We're working on several infrastructure sort of projects in the US. What Alice does is it can take large, complex jobs and then tell you the most efficient way to build them. Whether you want to apply that to infrastructure, we've done data centers, we've done solar facilities, we've done healthcare, hospitals. It doesn't matter. It's almost agnostic in its ability to be applied to any type of construction project that you want. Healthcare is no exception. We've done, I think, $350 million hospital, followed by a $210 million hospital in the US.
Wow. And in terms of being an inventor, what led you down this path to want to create this technology?
I think for me, I always like to push the boundaries. I grew up in the Lebanese war, and so I saw really firsthand how destruction affects society. And so I learned very quickly how to build. And then when I grew up, I went to Afghanistan. I was a private civilian contractor in Kabul, really helping the reconstruction efforts of the country. Our company slogan was "Take it easy, we'll build it again." And so we did that for 13 months. I really saw, I was very young at the time, but I got given a lot of responsibility, and I saw how inefficient the process was. And so I ended up doing a PhD in the topic and really trying to figure out better ways to optimize it. And being in Silicon Valley, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So we applied AI to it, and it turns out that it works, and it works really, really well. There's a lot of inefficiency in construction, and applying AI to it really unlocks a lot of efficient cycles that you can sort of start doing.
That's really interesting in terms of kind of infusing AI in the construction process. What does that look like?
It's a great question. So I've put about 13 years of my life into it. And so I started doing conceptual research. And so conceptual research is just figuring out the pieces of the puzzle. And so what I mean by that is what is a crew? What is labor? What is equipment? How do you model cranes? How do you model overtime, calendars, resources, materials? So, just really spending 2 years of my life thinking about what are the pieces of the puzzle. Then from there, we went to theoretical research. So how do those pieces interact? What are the mathematical equations that govern these interactions? And how could you model it in a computer? And once I had that piece, started doing prototyping. And so just simple, small scripts of algorithms that could sort of crunch little problems. And then at one point, there was this sort of realization like, wait, this thing is alive. It knows how to build it. It cracked it, And then from there, it went to commercial product and then commercialization. And so that's taken 13 years at this point.
Wow. And did you find it difficult when it came to getting it on the market to convince people that this is a game changer?
I remember Edison has this quote, which is innovation is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration. And I thought to myself at the time, the idea is worth about 20% at least. And as I sort of went through the years, I at one point realized, okay, he was right. And today I actually think it's the idea is worth less than 1%. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges. I actually have come to the conclusion that the innovation part is really just about the ability to bang your head against the wall longer than the other person. I think it's a lot less to do with skill or intelligence or ability, but just kind of gritting through it. So yeah, it has been challenging for sure.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's very rewarding. And I'm sure that many people in our society very much appreciate it because having this innovative thought and process will make a lot of people's lives a lot easier, right?
I hope so. The highs are definitely very, very high. You got that one day every couple of months where you crack that next piece of the puzzle and it's working and it's up and it's flying and it's doing all this cool stuff. And it's not comparable to almost anything else. It's a great sense of joy, but quickly followed by, 59 days of, this thing's on fire. It's not working, and that's generally the kind of way it works. But slowly, it's been slow and steady progress. It feels like the Silicon Valley roller coaster where everybody tells you, up and down and up and down and up and down. But if you look over the course of the last decade, it's just been a average, steady sort of curve or steady slope, of improvement. And when I look at it today, it's definitely, I wouldn't have imagined it would be this big and this sort of powerful and this cool when I started it.
That is very cool. And even though you're not necessarily at the top of the mountain in terms of this technology, is there anything on the forefront that maybe is next for you?
Yeah, the release of the residential unit. That's, I think, one of the next things that we're doing. And we're, interestingly enough, looking at also targeting large, complex industrial jobs, solar, oil and gas, sort of upper end of the spectrum, so north of like 1.5 billion is the other sort of flip side of it. And it's interesting that they both require like a setup before you send it into the system for it to be crunched. Just a different kind of setup.
All right, very nice. And in terms of how the construction kind of contractors are responding, are they pretty receptive? Because generally, as someone who's worked with contractors occasionally over the course of her life, I know that they like their processes.
Yeah, for sure. I think construction has received an unfair reputation for not being innovative. And I think that it's not that construction is not innovative. We are the last or second last in industry after agriculture to digitize because the problems that we're digitizing tend to be bigger and more complex than other fields. We had to wait for design, architecture to digitize. That only happened in 2015. And it's because the machines needed to catch up. And so you'll definitely find very innovative people. We work with construction companies that have in-house PhDs, research centers, computer vision sort of scientists, or developing their own software for drones and all kinds of, I say cutting edge research. So it definitely exists in the construction industry. You just have to look.
Yes, without a doubt. And as far as it concerns cutting edge research and innovation, I know you guys are looking toward the residential arm, but is there anything that we can anticipate possibly coming out in the future, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that what's happened in construction today is what happened to manufacturing back in the 70s and 80s. Construction as an industry is getting digitized. And I think the year that, if you were to sort of put 1 year where that started to happen, I think 2017 is a safe bet. 2017, I think there was a congruence of factors. The technology was there, the cloud computing, the processing speed, venture capitalists started pouring money. I think the money doubled and you started to see a big shift. And what's happening is that there's a new ecosystem coming at us in construction. The next 5 to 10 years is going to see a very, very different landscape. And that ecosystem that's getting developed is, in my opinion, going to get managed or to a large part valued by 30 to 50 companies. And the exciting thing is for today, everybody in construction can be part of that wave. I realize that just like the researchers, the startups, the companies, the reporters, everybody that's involved in construction can ride this. The most exciting thing that's happened to our field, I think, really in the last 2 millennia.
All right. Well, we definitely look forward to it. And anybody who's interested in Alice Technologies, where should they go for more information?
AliceTechnologies.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rene Marcos.
Thank you, Adrian.
And it's more conversation with Adrian Lawrence. And this time I'm bringing you the executive director of the Advancement Project of National Office. That's Judith Brown-Dianis. Thank you so much for joining us, Judith.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so I know that 50 Black-led orgs sent a letter to Congressional Black Caucus. What was it about?
So it went up to 65 Black-led organizations. We were happy. We got a few more. So we were sending a letter because the Congressional Black Caucus was in discussions with other people in the House of Representatives about 2 particular bills that would support funding for more police. In particular, the Invest to Protect Act was the bill that stayed in play after the Progressive Caucus killed the other one. And we just wanted to let them know that we were opposed to that, right? That in fact, that Black people, many Black people, millions, took to the streets in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And we didn't forget. We didn't forget that we wanted something different. We didn't forget that police are not accountable, and that we wanted to make sure that the Congressional Black Caucus knew that Black people still care about policing, and that we don't want to continue to support a system that has been killing us.
Absolutely, and with good reason. And so to see the potential that law enforcement would get even further funding, especially when they get a considerable amount, including that makes them a militarized body in our society, and the individuals that they often target tend to look like you and I. And so as it concerns this mobilization effort to get these voices, these signatories involved in this letter, what has gone into that?
Well, there's so the letter was put together by my organization, Advancement Project, along with the Movement for Black Lives, which is a network of Black-led organizations that came together really back after Mike Brown was murdered. And then the Black Voters Matter was another one of the organizations, and Black Futures Lab, Action Lab. And we really wanted to come together because we knew we work with all of these organizations that are doing incredible work across the country to reimagine public safety. And so we moved pretty quickly to get folks on board. And again, this was really to put a line in the sand, because we know that, it's a slippery slope, right? It's like one bill and then another bill and then another bill, because we also know that the American Recovery Plan, when people thought money was going to states and to local governments for recovery during and after the pandemic, to actually help us, that there were billions of dollars, $10 billion going to police and to public safety. But many cities use that money to give bonuses to police officers, to hire more police officers, to upgrade their equipment, to get more technology. And so we continue down this path. And, and we're being told that in the media that there's just this violence issue and that everyone should care. And we have politicians running in the midterms who are running on who can be the toughest on crime. Meanwhile, Black folks are suffering under the knee and under the literal knee of the police. And so, there are a number of civil rights groups that meet with the Congressional Black Caucus all the time, but it's these smaller groups that are organizing in our communities, that are on the front lines, that don't get heard from often. And so we wanted to make sure their voices were in the mix.
Absolutely, and having those voices be heard and hopefully respected and honored is something that's incredibly important, especially for the progress of our society. And as it concerns this letter and the voices who contributed to it, what do you think in the letter, at least in your position as an attorney and a civil rights movement individual who focuses on advocating for equality, what do you think is the most persuasive element in that letter?
Well, I think I would hope that the most persuasive part is that, first of all, we pointed out the number of police killings that have happened very recently. I mean, Akron, Ohio is one, so we wanted to make sure they know that Black people are still being killed by the police, even though the media is not covering it as much. And two, that we have a different vision for public safety. And that different vision is that we really want to be reimagining public safety by supporting the things that we know will let our communities thrive. So, why are we criminalizing people who are unhoused instead of making sure they have housing, right? Why are we so quick to criminalize people who have drug addiction instead of giving them help? Maybe we know we need more mental health interventions for people instead of sending out the police, sending out mental health providers. We need schools that work for our young people and that have wraparound services for them. And so that's what we really want. And this comes back to like the whole conversation about defund the police, right? And the president saying, defund the police. And he's very clear, like those are the words that he uses, which is just kind of a pushback to the millions of people who took to the streets in 2020. And what we're saying is it's time to do something drastically different, because the police do not keep us safe. And we want something different than what we saw in the 1990s after the crime bill of 1994 added 100,000 more police to our streets. We know what happened as a result, that mass incarceration happened as a result. And yet we have a president who is ready to push forward on a safer America plan that would put 100,000 more police on the streets in the United States. And so we're hoping that we can continue to let people see a different vision of what safety means, and that it really means investing in us and our communities instead of the police.
And so the letter notes that if Congress wants to improve public safety, that it should pursue legislative-backed agendas like those outlined in the People's Response Act. What kind of examples do you have?
Well, the People's Response Act is sponsored by Congresswoman Cori Bush, who is from St. Louis, where Mike Brown was murdered. And many of our organizations actually worked on putting that bill together. And again, that would invest in things like housing, violence interrupters, mental health interventions, all of the things that we need to thrive instead of giving money to the police. We could, and the other problem is that we know that police are unaccountable, and Congress can't pass the actual George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, but they can keep giving us police. And so we're saying enough already.
Absolutely. And the thing is it's at least disappointing on my end to think that, or actually to see that President Biden doesn't see the ineptitude of police and the thought that we are pouring resources in them continuously, yet they are not protecting and serving. And thus it would seem wise to pour resources and other things that are proven to be more effective as it comes to the needs of individuals in our society. And so as it concerns the focus here with the letter and also the motivation behind it, what other kind of backing do you think may be necessary in order for the letter's objectives to actually be fulfilled?
So the bill still has to go through the Senate, and we don't think we're hoping that it will not pass the Senate, but we also know that this was a trial balloon, that this was an opportunity for Democrats to see how far they could go on policing. And so while we hope it doesn't make it out of the Senate, what we really need to do is be prepared for this Safer America Act. And that we are really trying to get people ready for that fight. And to make sure that Democrats as well as Republicans know that we need something different. And so we're gonna keep pushing and we're gonna keep fighting for what our communities really deserve and need to thrive.
Yes, absolutely. And hopefully we will also have the backing of members of legislature who claim to want to ensure that they are listening to their constituents and looking out for their needs. And in terms of other opportunities to get involved that your organization is advancing and truly invested in when it comes to the Advancement Project National Office, what is on your agenda?
Sure. So we, first of all, we're a voting rights organization also. So we will be out protecting the vote during this midterm season. We have litigation that's ongoing, and so that's one of our fights. And then we have a cool little project called How Cops Get Off, and I hope people can go to policefreecommunities.org and you can learn about how police are unaccountable and what you can do about it. And then we're also doing education work. We're fighting back to make sure that police are taken out of schools because teenagers don't want police around. They don't feel safe with them. They would rather have counselors and restorative justice programs. And so that's the work of Advancement Project, supporting people on the ground who are on the front lines in trying to ensure that we have racial justice and an inclusive democracy.
Absolutely. Inclusion is incredibly necessary, particularly in today's day and age. And I was also wondering, with the midterms coming up, is there anything that you are particularly eyeing?
Yes. Well, first of all, we're worried about the Supreme Court because there are a few decisions that we think will come down that will deal another blow to the Voting Rights Act. And then in the states, we're worried in places like Georgia, where it's a battleground state, in Florida, where there are key elections around the governor's race and the senator's race. We are going to be monitoring to make sure that people actually have access to the polls, and worried about intimidation. And so, we are part of the Election Protection Coalition, and we hope people will call 1-866-RVOTE if they have a problem voting, but that we want to make sure people participate, because there's so much on the ballot this year about who is going to be in power, whether they're on our side on abortion bans, on voting rights, on inflation, and other issues that progressive folks care about.
Absolutely. And so if people want to get involved or follow you more in this effort, where should they go?
You can go to our website, which is www.advancementproject.org, and you can follow us on Twitter and on Instagram also.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Judith Brown Dianis, Executive Director, Advancement Project National Office.
Thanks, Adrienne.
The concept of the Young Turks means the audience, they are the Young Turks. They are the go-getters. They are the ones making the emphatic change happen in their local community. The reality is that we've always, young and the not so young, we've always cared about news. But when you do not see the messengers of the news look like you, when they do not share your experiences, exposures, and environment, and there's a disconnect between you and the news. I lecture in mass communications. One thing I tell all of my students, there is no such thing as non-biased news. It never has been. Non-biased news has always been an illusion. Let's go back to the 60s and 70s, where people would say that was the purity of non-biased news. News has a segment. That segment has a time. That time, you must do your story and be finished. That means the producer, the writer, the orator has to take out what they don't think is important and only leave in what they believe is important. They have a limited time to tell the story. They do not have time to tell everybody's version or everybody's side. And they get to choose the facts that they bring to you, as well as the nuance, which really is a word for opinion, that they bring to you, the context they bring to you. So we've always had a level of bias in news. Here's the issue. The issue is to not deceive individuals as if you don't have some level of opinion with your news commentary. And that's what TYT has never done. They've always been authentic in their approach to progressive ideology and their news analysis and political breakdown. And I think that's how you actually win the heart and soul of individuals who are consuming information from you, because now they see themselves in you.
This is where it all began for many elected progressive leaders. The Young Turks was one of the few media outlets to cover the races of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, and many, many more. We know a great majority of the country is actually progressive, and TYT is here to amplify these issues so that we can have better policies that a majority of the country actually supports. We want to drive positive change, and then we've been doing that for 20 years here. That's why we're launching Canvas 2022, a campaign to get out the vote and amplify progressive candidates, the progressive agenda, and their primary races. The midterm elections are fast approaching, and we know mainstream media won't cover progressive voices, but because the TYT audience is too strong, we can make a difference in the midterm elections to help progressives get elected and make sure our priorities are heard. Support our mission to drive positive change. Visit tyt.com/canvas2022.
There is so much heinous news out there. That's why we've got to laugh, not to cry. So join me, Francesca Fiorentini, and some of my progressive friends, comedians, actors, experts, and activists as we deliver an hour of laughter and analysis every week on my podcast, The Bituation Room. The Bituation Room is an invitation for all of us to take ourselves a little bit less seriously while still giving you some concrete ideas for action. New episodes are available every single week, so join the Frantifa and listen to The Bituation Room on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your TYT Network podcasts. And make sure to subscribe and give the show 5 stars, because I like stars.
Woo! It's up!
Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a massive and fantastic show ahead for you today. A lot of lunacy to get to, including some videos and audio that have been unearthed featuring that Walsh guy over at the Daily Wire, Matt Walsh, there we go, that's his first name, saying some pretty hideous things, including defending the idea of 16-year-old girls getting impregnated, wanting to go back to the days when that was normal. These are the people who want to protect the children. We also have another lunatic in the form of a gubernatorial candidate in Michigan who is going around taking photos of children to accuse them of being furries. We'll get to that a little later. But there are important stories to get to, including a fire that took place at an Amazon warehouse in New York. You probably won't be shocked at what the employers expected the employees to do, both during and after that fire, so we'll talk about that. And in the second hour, John Iadarola will not be with me today, but Jordan Ewell will be. He's in Los Angeles, he'll be in studio, and we'll be doing the second hour and the bonus episode for our members together. And as always, you can become a member by going to tyt.com/join, or if you're watching us on YouTube, just click on that join button and you can become a member that way. People are saying they've been really enjoying our members only bonus episodes lately, and I don't blame them. They've been pretty fire. So if you're missing out, if you're not a member, not only do you get that exclusive content, you also get to support the show, keep us sustainable. And I love that we're only accountable to you guys, so thank you for that. Without further ado, let's get to our first story, something that's not really getting much attention, but it certainly deserves it. You just watched a video featuring a fire that broke out at an Amazon warehouse in New York, JFK 8 to be specific, and that's also the warehouse that happened to unionize in Staten Island. Now, When workers rightfully protested in response to the safety hazard, Amazon actually retaliated by illegally suspending dozens of them. And I'll give you their reasoning for why they did that in just a moment. But first, why don't we get to the details of what transpired during the fire, what the employees were expected to do, why they protested, and what that led to. Well, the fire ended up breaking out in a trash compactor on Monday afternoon. Seth Goldstein, who happens to be a lawyer for the Amazon Labor Union, ALU, said that the compactor had been smoking for weeks before the fire. And he continues to say, God forbid they have to replace the compactor and lose their profits. By the way, how much could that possibly cost when you consider how much they make in profits? One of the reasons people are unionizing at Amazon is because the employer cares about profits and doesn't care about their lives. Where's the transparency here? Well, something we talk about a lot on this show is that the way the system is set up literally makes it so these employers, so that Amazon puts profit over human lives. Because their number one priority, their number one responsibility is to their shareholders, not to their employees. They see their employees as a cost. So the idea of keeping their employees safe, even as a fire is breaking out in the warehouse, that might be costly. The idea of preventing fires from taking place by replacing faulty equipment, it's gonna cut into the profits a little bit. Fiduciary responsibility. This is how the system works. Now, let me give you more details. A fire crew was sent to the warehouse. No one was injured, luckily. And day shift employees were sent home early with pay. That was the right thing to do. Sending the employees home early, there's a fire, they shouldn't be there. Even if the fire doesn't get to them, you have to keep in mind that we're talking about toxic fumes, we're talking about unhealthy air quality. You don't want them to be there. But then things get a little sketchy. The night shift employees were not informed of the fire at all. They had no idea that it happened. They show up to work and they notice that things are a little weird, smells strange. When they arrived to the warehouse, the night shift employees were taken into the break room and told that they had to work despite the fire that had just occurred. At this point, the warehouse is still pretty dangerous. It, according to the employees, overwhelmingly smelled like smoke from the fire. Workers were concerned about inhaling these toxic fumes, as they should be, and some couldn't even breathe. In fact, one of the workers ended up being hospitalized as a result of being there and as a result of inhaling those toxic fumes. So this is no joke. There was a fire in that warehouse. It was unsafe, and rather than ensuring that conditions in that warehouse were safe enough for employees to come back, they said, no, you gotta come back to work, night shift, you gotta be here. Now, instead of returning to work, around 650 of the workers simply refused to leave the break room. So there they are, they're protesting, and they're doing so by engaging in this work stoppage. The work stoppage lasted nearly 3 hours, according to the ALU, and almost 100 workers marched into the manager's office to demand that workers get sent home with pay, much like the day shift workers did. Now, they also were given a pretty insulting offer for a pay raise. Workers also protested an offer of a, 25-cent raise that the company had made in the past week, which the union called insulting, and it is insulting when you consider inflation, and said would amount to a pay cut due to inflation and the fact that workers at the warehouse still yet to have their union recognized by the $1.2 trillion company. So while the immediate situation involving this fire and the toxic fumes was enough for them to engage in this work stoppage, there were other issues at play as well, including the insulting offer to raise their pay by a whopping 25 cents an hour. Yesterday, Amazon decided, oh, you know what? We should probably listen to our workers. Just kidding, no, they didn't do that. They decided they would retaliate against the workers who decided to engage in the work stoppage. And so 10 of whom were union leaders, by the way. 10 of them were retaliated against, union leaders. The ALU has stated that the number could actually be as high as 80 employees in total who were retaliated against. Now, company spokesman Paul Flanagan said that while Amazon respects workers' rights to protest, no, they don't. It is not appropriate for employees to occupy active workspaces, break rooms, or thoroughfares in its warehouses. But that's actually incorrect. As Seth Goldstein mentioned, he called the suspensions of the Staten Island workers, quote, a violation of workers' rights to join in a collective action without the terms and conditions of their employment. Rights to join in a collective action about the terms and conditions of their employment. The workers didn't feel safe going back to work. They were engaging in rights that have been protected for 85 years under the National Labor Relations Act, Goldstein said. And Seth is correct. So the Seattle Times fact-checked this, and under federal labor law, employees have a right to engage in so-called concentrated activity for mutual aid or protection. In this case, they're seeking protection from toxic fumes in a warehouse that just experienced a fire. The union said that it intended to file an unfair labor practice charge in response to the suspensions. Now, look, we have talked about the conditions in which these warehouse workers have been working at Amazon. Incredibly hot, conditions during the summertime, the refusal to use fans or AC, the refusal to give these workers necessary breaks, this obsession with tracking how many bathroom breaks they take, how long those bathroom breaks last. Even when you talk about some of the delivery drivers for Amazon, we did a story talking about how the demands are so unbearable. They have so much on their plate that the delivery drivers are reduced to defecating in plastic bags in their vehicles. So none of this really surprises me. But I hope for anyone who might have been on the fence in regard to whether or not it makes sense for workers to organize, hopefully stories like this convince you that it is a good idea. That if you don't have collective bargaining, if you don't have organized workers, well, those workers really have no say over their working conditions, over their pay, over the way they're treated, even when there's a disaster in the warehouse they're working in. So just to give you a few other examples, though Amazon employed only about 33% of warehouse workers in 2021, it was responsible for 49% of warehouse injuries that year. Also, the report's authors say that the reason for Amazon's high injury rate is the company's strict quotas and obsession with speed, which it monitors using invasive surveillance systems that track workers' every move. The company also pushes hurt workers to keep working while they are recovering, even if the work will perpetuate the injury or make it worse. So there are certain musculoskeletal disorders like carpal tunnel or back pain. Those things are common among Amazon workers, according to an investigation that was done. So this is a real problem for warehouse workers. This is a real problem for people who are employed at Amazon. You might come across some of Amazon's cheesy ads where they purport to treat their workers really well and we pay for their educational experiences. But fact of the matter is, when you're dealing with a situation where your employer is expecting you to come into a warehouse that just had a fire and you can still smell smoke, there are still toxic fumes. No, that company does not actually care about your well-being and your health. And I'm really glad that these workers got together, did this sit-in and decided, no, we're not gonna take it. We're not gonna put our lives and bodies on the line just to maintain, the profits that our employer demands of us. We're not gonna take it. And I love that they had the power to do that. Now, the real question is, will there be consequences for Amazon after they decided to illegally suspend dozens of their employees who took part in this? We'll see. We'll keep an eye on this story and update you guys as we learn more. But it is telling that right now, you have politicians running around fear-mongering about high school students dressing as furries and using litter boxes and school bathrooms, when in reality, you have workers who are being used and abused like crazy all across this country. They don't care about that. They want to empower that, but they gotta distract from the fact that they want to empower that by pointing to whatever squirrel, whatever made up culture war issue they need to distract you with. And today, apparently, it's furries, and we'll get to that later in the show. All right, let's move on, because GOP hypocrisy.
You're telling me Walker used his money to reportedly pay some skank for an abortion. So I don't care if Herschel Walker paid to abort endangered baby eagles. I want control of the Senate.
Well, Dana Lausch, I mean, just gave away the whole game. Real transparent there, real candid. Because fact of the matter is, and I've said this a billion times on the show, the right wing never has and never will care about abortion. They will exploit the issue of reproductive rights and abortion to accumulate power. And that's what Loesch was saying right then and there. I don't care if Herschel Walker, a Republican Senate candidate in Georgia, paid for a former girlfriend to get an abortion after he impregnated her. I don't care about that. I care about power. I care about him winning. I care about a Republican sitting in that seat. That's what matters. We just use the anti-abortion narrative to accumulate power, that's it. And by the way, Herschel Walker himself has certainly engaged in those talking points. He's one of the most extreme in terms of wanting to ban abortions in any and all cases, even if the mother's life is at risk as a result of that pregnancy. It's very House of the Dragon, to be honest with you. Anyway, now she wanted to further clarify her point by saying, quote, one guy who reportedly paid for a girlfriend's abortion compared to one guy who wants to pay for everyone's abortions. So her argument is, well, Herschel Walker's the lesser of two evils because Raphael Warnock, the Democratic incumbent he's running against, wants us to pay for everyone's abortions, except that's not true. And we literally have laws that prevents the use of taxpayer money on abortions. It's called the Hyde Amendment. She knows that. She knows that. Dana Loesch should just say what she really means. I mean, as a spokesperson for the NRA for a long time, I think it's abundantly clear that people like Dana Loesch doesn't care at all about the lives of children, literal living, breathing children who get shot up in school campuses across this country. The idea that she cares about zygotes and fetuses is laughable to say the least, but she cares about power. She cares about Republican control, and that's what this is about. Now, let's not be too hard on her because she's just one example of the diseased thinking that we see in the Republican Party. In fact, after news broke of Herschel's scandal, he was actually rewarded by Republican donors and voters because he raised quite a bit of money. Let's go to this tweet. Walker campaign manager Scott Paradise told staff this morning the Daily Beast story was a setback, but that fundraising was surging after Walker's denial. In fact, Paradise mentioned the Access Hollywood episode saying Trump still made it to the White House per person familiar. Of course Trump made it to the White House because it ain't about the family values messaging that they purport to believe in. It ain't about the anti-abortion messaging that they purport to believe in. They don't believe in any of that. It's all about power. The hypocrisy has always been there. It's always slapped us in the face over and over again. And for some reason, some portion of Republican voters still believe that Republicans represent the party of family values. And again, it's about exploiting those issues for power. So I want to give you some previous examples. One of my favorite examples, I know I've mentioned him on the show a lot, Scott DesJarlais, who happens to still be a member of Congress. He is a Republican congressman from the state of Tennessee. It's 4th congressional district. He turns out was caught up in an abortion-related scandal himself back in 2014. According to testimony during his divorce trial, the Tennessee congressman supported his ex-wife's decision to get abortions, two abortions, not one but two, before their marriage. The former doctor also allegedly pressured a 24-year-old patient he was having an affair with to also get an abortion. Even after all that information came out, DesJarlais still had the gall to vote for anti-abortion bills and boast of having a 100% pro-life voting record. Yes, because don't you know, guys? They like to latch onto those culture war issues, knowing full well that if they succeed in getting legislation passed in regard to those issues, the only people who really end up suffering is everyone else. They've got all the resources necessary to get to where they need to go to get the legal abortion. For all the other women out there, anyone else who doesn't have the resources, anyone else who might be desperate, if you gotta resort to the coat hanger, sorry. I mean, DesJarlais needs political power. Herschel Walker needs political power. Dana Loesch is very concerned that they might lose that Senate seat. They can't do that. They got to make sure they earn that Senate seat by lying to the American people about how good and moral they are, while simultaneously engaging in all sorts of questionable activity and behavior behind the scenes. It's amazing because socially, I'm obviously pretty left, pretty far left, okay? I have a live and let live kind of mentality. But I don't know, man. I look at my life and I look at my marriage, and it is so wholesome compared to some of the garbage you see among Republican politicians and candidates. I mean, insanely wholesome compared to what Desjardins was up to, banging 24-year-old patients and then forcing them to have abortions. Really? And then he goes around moralizing about reproductive rights. By the way, quick video that CNN put together at the time of Desjardins' behavior.
We really appreciate this big win. It was, it's nice to have a great margin of victory. I think
Congressman Scott Desjardins is the pro-life Republican and doctor who slept with multiple patients, got one pregnant, demanded she and his expecting wife get abortions.
Is that family values? He got reelected. Herschel Walker makes $50,000 in fundraising on the night the Daily Beast story broke. It was a surge in donations. Desjardins gets reelected. He's still a congressman. He's cheating on his wife left and right. Testified that he, urged both women, his ex-wife and the 24-year-old he got pregnant, urged them to get abortions. It's amazing, it really is. And by the way, we're now learning just how little the Republican establishment really cares about abortion. Because it turns out that Herschel Walker's campaign knew about it months before it even came out through the Daily Beast report. So this was reported in Politico, and I thought it was fascinating. So there's a Republican strategist who's involved with the campaign, said this. It's not that we knew about this specific case, but he's a wealthy, famous football player who is obviously spreading his seed, said the strategist, granted anonymity to discuss internal party discussions. Let me give you more. There's Liz Mayer, who is a Republican opposition researcher. She is not involved with Herschel Walker's campaign, but she does remember hearing people talking about how he paid for someone's abortion long ago, as far back as 2021. She says, quote, I remember hearing about this very early and thinking it was like a classic Oppo hit. This abortion thing I heard. Having more kids than he was copying to, I heard. And all of this was before we got to the point of him being the Republican candidate. I had heard about the alleged liabilities and abortion was top of the list. So they knew, they didn't care, they did not care. Okay, let that sink in. As they're celebrating the stripping of women's bodily autonomy by our Supreme Court, as they're pretending to be the righteous ones who are allegedly saving babies, they're also promoting and pushing for a man who paid for his ex-girlfriend's abortion to be the Republican candidate in the Senate race in Georgia. They knew, they didn't care because they don't care. They've never cared. Again, abortion is never, the debate around it is never really about abortion. It's all a game, it's all about power. And I really need people to understand that. Now, if you happen to be religious, if you happen to feel uncomfortable with abortion, you think that a zygote or a fetus is the equivalent of an independent, living, breathing human life, great, I disagree with you. I just do, I disagree with you. But you get to make decisions about your own body. Well, I mean, unless you're in a red state right now. In that case, you don't, if you're a woman, let's just keep it real. But for religious folks who genuinely buy into this, you do get to make the decision to not have an abortion, to not take birth control, to live your life as a pious, in your mind, individual. But that shouldn't seep into policy, and that shouldn't seep into the private lives of other individuals who might not believe in your religious doctrine. The idea of controlling other people's bodies based on the political schemes of these disgusting politicians who can't wait to get their D wet with their patients. Not interested in that. That's what Republicans are. Let's keep it real. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
Get some ice cream.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. Lots of great comments here. I'm gonna start with Seth in our members section who says, hey TYT fam, just wanna say thanks. I won the Food for Thought last weekend. My husband and son and I are moving into our new home in Los Angeles at the end of the month. It's the first home we've bought as a family. Oh, I love that. And not only is our wallet smarting a bit, but one of the hardest things about the first few days in a new home is setting up the kitchen. Now we don't have to worry about it. We're going to use our gift card to get dinner for those first few nights. I love that. So for those of you who are like, what is this meal thing? Well, we're doing Food for Thought trivia again. We had done it previously, took a little break, and it was such a hit that we decided to do it again. So it's a TYT member exclusive. All you have to do is obviously pay attention to the show because we ask a trivia question related to that week's show every Friday. And we ask that question during the post game. And you can answer for your chance to win a $100 Blue Apron gift card. I'm not in any way paid to say this. This is not like a plug that I'm even asked to do. I've been using Blue Apron since the beginning of the pandemic, and I personally love it. So I really love the fact that you guys are winning and you get to see what the meals are all about. By the way, every Friday, 150 of our members get a chance to win, right? So as long as you're one of our members, if you submit the correct trivia answer, it's very likely you're gonna win because 150 win every week. All right, so definitely check that out, and you can become a member by going to tyt.com/join, or if you're watching us on YouTube, click on that join button to become a member. We've got Sarah Wolf who says, now Amazon can file an insurance claim to replace the burnt equipment without incurring the cost of replacing faulty equipment. That's a really interesting point. Yeah, it really is. We've got Biden flavor corn pop, who, by the way, Biden today was caught on a hot mic saying no one F's with the Bidens, except for Joe Manchin, Kirsten Sinema, all the corporate Democrats who threw away your Build Back Better agenda, but it's okay. You can go ahead and brag about how you guys are all tough. Biden flavor corn pop says, I'm amazed more fires haven't happened at Amazon warehouses considering how Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Bezos has acted toward employees and maintenance, unionize and lionize, exactly. And honestly, I hope there aren't any more fires because it is incredibly dangerous to breathe in that smoke and the fumes. Gabby Marita says, if there's a company that makes so much money, it can finance its owner's private space program, I think they can afford to pay workers a baseline of $15 an hour. Yes. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I Am Sock in our member section asks a question. Where are all of the Democrat opposition researchers? I Am Sock they exist. And if you want to know what it looks like when Democrats employ opposition researchers during campaigns, just take a good hard look at what happens to progressives when they're running against corporate incumbents, corporate Democrats who happen to be incumbents in these congressional seats or congressional races. So they exist, trust me. By the way, sounds like a really fun job. Like, I think I'd be really good at that job. I would enjoy it. Let's talk about Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh has a long history of defending the use of violence to accomplish political goals. How do I know that? Well, Media Matters just put out a pretty explosive report documenting some of his previous statements from a radio show that he used to be involved in. So he was working at WZBH and seems like he wanted to kind of goad the Tea Party to think outside the box when it came to accomplishing some political goals of theirs. So he gave a speech at a Tea Party event some years ago. You're about to watch a snippet of it. Let's watch.
Our founding fathers had very specific goals in mind that they wanted to accomplish. It wasn't a generalized sense of outrage. It was, these are our goals that we want to accomplish. And by the way, they were willing to back it up with guns and violent force. If you want extreme things to happen, you have to be willing to go to extremes. The civil rights movement, they had specific goals. They boycotted. The people that were oppressing them, they made them hurt. They didn't just hold signs, they made them hurt. So I would say that it's time for extreme measures. I'm not advocating violence, but why are we limiting ourselves? I'm just posing one possibility here. Let's say that next tax day, what if 10 million people didn't file their taxes? What if I know everyone's like, well, you gotta file your taxes. Well, our founding fathers, everyone keeps bringing up our founding fathers. They were willing to pick up guns and kill people for what they wanted. A sign won't do it, and calling your congressman won't do it.
Okay, I mean, he mentioned they picked up their guns, they had to get extreme. And then he puts in that little statement about like, what if 10 million people don't pay their taxes? 10 million people will get a letter from the IRS with demands to pay their taxes, to file their tax returns. And if they don't, they will probably end up in prison for refusing to pay their taxes. That's what will happen, even if it's 10 million people. So it's interesting, because you can make a point that, I mean, he might be suggesting violence. Maybe he's suggesting violence, but he didn't just say it. But he repeats certain things on his show, even back in the day, even back in 2010. So let's go to his repeated thinly veiled incitement of violence on the radio show. Let's watch that.
We've been on this path for 100 years or more. We probably lost our republic after Reconstruction. If you want actual change that isn't going to reverse itself in 10 years or 5 years or in 1 year, then you do have to look at extreme action. And I will tell you the extreme action that I am now referring to. What needs to happen, I think, first and foremost, and it starts with taxes, doesn't it? It started that way with the revolutionaries. And by the way, you go to these tea parties, you got people there literally dressed up like it's a costume party, dressed up like our founding fathers, dressed up like Samuel Adams and so forth. They're the ones that keep harkening back to the revolutionary times. You're the ones, Tea Party people, that are comparing yourself in a not subtle way at all to the revolutionaries.
But then you forget what they did to accomplish their goals.
Right, I'm saying, okay, you guys are dressing up like revolutionaries, you're calling this the Tea Party. Don't you understand what they did? Even the Tea Party was an illegal act. It was trespassing and vandalism. Don't you get that? Okay, you don't compare yourself to them because you're not willing to do what they did.
Fascinating that he seems to be a proponent of trespassing and vandalism when it suits the political ambitions that he's in favor of. But if there are protests that get a little out of hand and there might be some looters who co-opt that demonstration, and it's for an issue that he doesn't care about, like, ensuring that cops don't use brutal force and excessive force on people, then all of a sudden it's unacceptable. Those extreme measures, unacceptable. But again, he just quickly mentioned the tax thing and then he moved on to how, the Tea Party, they took extreme measures. They took extreme measures. Again, the idea that an extreme measure is just not paying your taxes is laughable. That's not, but there's a reason why he says it. I think that it's to point to something, and no, I wasn't suggesting violence, I was suggesting don't pay your taxes. I mean, I slipped that in, but most of my commentary was about extreme measures like using violence, like picking up guns and using violence. And it's no surprise that Matt Walsh provides cover for the violent rioters in the nation's capital on January 6th, because he sees that and he's like, finally, this is what I've been calling for, this is what I want. Right? He doesn't find it objectionable. He doesn't find it problematic. That's why they provide cover for that terrible, terrible activity that day, for that riot that took place that day. Riots are totally fine for Matt Walsh. Again, as long as he believes in the political message or the political pursuit taking place during that riot. But if there's rioting or looting in response to police brutality, unacceptable. These people are thugs, according to Matt Walsh. These people need to be put away, according to Matt Walsh. It is fascinating, isn't it? Now, Walsh additionally encouraged subordinates, interns, literal interns, to participate in some pretty sexually demeaning stunts. And so Media Matters had unearthed that. And it's not fun to watch, to be honest with you guys. So there was an intern who he used a stun gun on during his show. Gonna give you a warning, not fun to watch, but nonetheless, let's take a look.
For the comedy of it, and also because that will hurt the least, I think we should shock you in the ass. At least at first. I think we should shock you. No, I don't like that idea, but I do like a shocking you in the ass, so get over here.
I thought you were my friend.
We are, that's why we're doing it.
1, 2, 3, go. Ow! Ow!
Did it shock you too?
Oh. Wait, I only got like half a second.
That's all you're supposed to get.
Let's try it one more time.
That hurts.
You want me to hold on to you while we do it?
That hurts.
Let's just try it once in the ass.
Maybe off the ass. Oh, wait, no.
Go ahead, turn around. Ready?
God, I don't know if we can put this on the blog section.
Right. You got video of this?
Yeah, I got video. Hold on, let me zoom in. No, I don't know if I want to zoom in.
2, 3, go.
You got a pimply pale ass, bro.
Go. Ow, 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 ow.
I mean, conservatives are right. What's happening to our culture, you know? There's a real big problem with our culture. You've got men taking their pants down in the workplace. You've got them abusing each other in private regions of their bodies. What's going on? I mean, it's just so gross. But if you think that's bad, wait till you get a load of Matt Walsh justifying the idea of 16-year-olds getting pregnant. 16-year-olds used to get pregnant all the time, Matt Walsh says. In fact, women are the most fertile between the ages of 16 and 24, Matt Walsh said during the broadcast, which we're about to show you a snippet of. So let's take a quick look at that.
Teen pregnancy is a new problem.
Yes.
In the sense that it's only recently that we decided that it is a problem. Recently, in the last 30 years or so, we decided that that's way too young to start a family.
Why?
And because now
divorce rates would probably go up, and once you're that young, you can't really make sure that you know.
No, girls are no.
Girls were getting married early, and marriages were lasting longer. You very rarely hear about like these relationships that go to their your diamond anniversary, your 50th anniversary, and all this. That's a dying breed of people out there.
Yeah, and those were all people that got married very young. That's why
they're still alive.
Yeah, that's why you can have someone in their 70s who's celebrating their 55th wedding anniversary because they got married when they were teenagers. So what I'm saying is that the problem is not per se teenage pregnancy, it's unwed pregnancy. That's the problem in society.
The problem in society is that we have a problem with 16-year-olds getting pregnant. We need to maybe rethink that, according to Matt Walsh. That was bonkers. I want to make a quick point about the idea that marriages lasted longer back in the day. I mean, if you go way back in the country's history when it was incredibly difficult to get divorced, then maybe like you'd have to be stuck in a terrible marriage because of how difficult it was to get divorced. Maybe you can argue that that point was correct. However, the idea that divorces are happening more frequently now because people are getting married later in life is insane. And in fact, if you look at the states that happen to have the highest divorce rates, they're all liberal states. They're all coastal elites, except they're not. They're not. So let's look at the latest data. This was released by the CDC, and it's in regard to divorce rates between 2019 and 2020. This is the latest data. And so the number that you see represented next to the states is the number of divorces per capita, okay, per 1,000 marriages. Wyoming, number one at 3.8 divorces per 1,000 marriages. Alabama comes in at number 2 with 3.7, Arkansas 3.6, Oklahoma 3.5, Idaho 3.4, Utah 3.3. You guys get the picture. Then you have Mississippi, Tennessee, Alaska. You guys get it, right? By the way, I could have kept going because the next several states are still red states. Because guess what? When you're 16, you don't even know who you are yet. Look, all the 16-year-olds who might be watching the show right now, I love you. I remember when I first started working at the show when I was 20, and audience members were like, "You're too young. You don't know what you're talking about." And I would get so offended by that. I'm like, I do know what I'm talking about. Now I look back and I look at who I was at 20, and it was a completely different person. You grow up, you mature. The idea that it's good for 16-year-olds to get pregnant is insane. And by the way, I think it would be insane if you lived in a society that actually took care of its people, that actually had a system in place where everyone is made whole regardless of what kind of circumstance they find themselves in. We don't live in that country. We live in America that has no safety net. So the idea that a 16-year-old girl getting pregnant is a good idea, like, is insane to me, because we already live in an economy where you need to have both people, both parents, working full time to make ends meet. What's a 16-year-old without a high school education, without a high school degree supposed to do? Where is she supposed to work? How is she supposed to provide for her child? No, it's like insane thinking. But this is what they salivate over. Just rewinding, undoing any progress that we've seen in the country. By the way, I know Matt Walsh has kids. I don't know if he has a daughter, but does he want his 16-year-old daughter to get pregnant? If that happened, would he be like, this is normal, this is good. This is when she's most fertile. And by the way, just shut up. And how about don't get involved in whether or not other people have kids and when they have kids? It's none of your goddamn business. He's just super creepy. There's something super creepy about people who literally spend time thinking about what other people should do in their sex lives, or what other people should decide in regard to their reproduction or whether or not they have children. Again, it's none of your business. But the fact that he's so obsessed about it really makes one wonder, like, what is it? What is it about any progress that we've had in this country that makes him so uncomfortable? And I don't know, man, I really don't want to take advice about when to procreate from a guy who seems to get his rocks off by tasing an intern in the ass. Not interested in that. We go from one lunatic to the next. Lunatics all around today. Let's go to the state of Michigan. The Republican candidate for we're going to Colorado, my bad. The Republican candidate for Colorado's gubernatorial race is now taking photos of kids, literal children, that she suspects of being furries. So we spoke about Heidi Ganahl just yesterday, and she had decided to share her panic over this idea that high school campuses are installing litter boxes in their bathrooms to accommodate students who identify as furries, as animals. Now, that's insanity, and it led to a school district coming out and saying, no, this is not happening, this is insane. But nonetheless, she wanted to provide evidence, okay? And I'll talk about that evidence in just a moment, but just a quick reminder of how much of a lunatic this woman is.
Not many people know that we have furries in Colorado schools. Have you heard about this, Jimmy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, kids identifying as cats. It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but it's happening all over Colorado, and schools are tolerating it. It's insane. What on earth are we doing? Knock it off. Schools, put your foot down. Like, stop it. Let's get back to teaching basics and not allow this woke ideological stuff infiltrate our schools. And it is happening here in Colorado. It's why I moved from Boulder Valley to Douglas County, because it was happening in my kids' schools 4 years ago.
I just love that this woman who's spouting the dumbest nonsense I've heard, and that's saying something because I cover dumb nonsense on a daily basis. I love the idea that she's giving people advice on how we should educate kids. Maybe you need to get an education. Someone this gullible and this stupid probably shouldn't be running for office, that's for sure. I mean, she's the Republican candidate. She is the Republican candidate for governor in Colorado, and she thinks kids are like squatting on litter boxes in school bathrooms to tinkle. She's crazy. But if you think that's crazy, she goes further. She wants to provide proof. She's like, no, I want to prove that this is real. This is real. We should all panic about this. We shouldn't panic about extreme poverty. We shouldn't panic about the hundreds of thousands of homeless people in this country. We shouldn't panic about people getting evicted from their homes or the economic instability they're facing. No, the real issue today, everyone, is furries and children tinkling in school litter boxes. Unacceptable, we need to do something. She wants to provide proof, so she's going around taking pictures of kids that she suspects are furries. A
couple months ago.
What? Like what? Listen, I don't have kids. I can't even imagine what I would want to do to anyone who's harassing my children and taking pictures of them to accuse them of being furries, but that is what she's doing. So how do we know about this? So Kyle Clark, who's with Colorado's 9 News, reported this. Today, Heidi Ganahl confirmed to KNUS host George Brochler that her campaign is collecting and distributing photos of children they believe are identifying as animals. We provided pictures, but we blurred out the faces, Ganahl said. Doesn't matter, you're still a creep. Don't go around taking pictures of kids because you suspect they might be furries, because you fell for a stupid hoax about litter boxes in school bathrooms. I can't, she's a grown-ass woman, and this is literally what she's doing. She's running a campaign for governor of Colorado, and she's chasing down kids and taking pictures of them. This is how you protect the children? You protect the children by harassing them and taking pictures of them? It's so incredibly creepy. They go around accusing teachers of being groomers while simultaneously raising their hands and admitting that they're creepily taking pictures of minors so they can make all sorts of ridiculous accusations against them. It's unclear how the Ganahl campaign is confirming that the individual children in the photos they are distributing identify as animals as opposed to simply dressing up in cat ears or other type of animal costumes. It is, by the way, October, and schools do end up having Halloween events. So I hope conservatives can handle that, okay? I hope you guys don't panic about it. It's okay. Halloween is an annual celebration. Kids love to get involved. Sometimes they dress up as monsters. Doesn't mean that they're actually monsters. They might dress up like Dracula, doesn't mean that they're gonna come suck your blood. I mean, I don't know, I feel like we need to explain the basics to these literal lunatics. Ganahl said her campaign is providing the photos they've collected to journalists. When 9 News asked for proof of her claim last week, a Ganahl spokeswoman provided a screenshot of a photo of someone in a furry costume, which appeared to be from a conservative parents' Facebook group. Middle-aged women should be banned from Facebook. Let me go further. Just mothers. Mothers should be banned from Facebook. They just should. It does nothing but harm them. They start buying into insane conspiracy theories. It's a vicious cycle of paranoia. Just stop. Log off. Take a walk. Take a walk with your kids. Go to the movies with your kids. Go hang out with friends. Get off the internet. The internet is rotting people's brains to an extent that I would have never imagined before. The idea that there's like a conservative mom's Facebook page where they're like distributing creepy photos of children that they suspect are furries, you're actually the problem. If you're worried about keeping kids safe, you should think about how we can keep them safe from you, okay? Denver's Jefferson County School District which Ganal singled out, refuted her comments saying, quote, "There is absolutely no truth to this claim." Can't believe they even had to put that statement out. "There are no litter boxes in our buildings and students are not allowed to come to school in costume. There are no furries or students identifying as such during the school day," the district spokesperson told Colorado's Fox 31. If you're worried about inflation or any other substantive issue that's impacting your life day to day, definitely don't look at Republicans. Don't look at Republican candidates to help you, that's for sure. They're too busy taking creepy pictures of your kids. Gotta take a break. We'll be right back with more news, including Alex Jones being trash yet again.
Ice cream.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our social break. Lots of comments from our Twitch subs, so I want to read some of those, starting with Orpheus Alcon, who says, Walsh and his ilk would be right at home in the dark ages. Absolutely. I mean, remember when we were withdrawing from Afghanistan, you had all these conservative men who were just openly saying like, Taliban seems pretty dope. I wish we had a version of that here. I Am Sock says, the control room needs to hit the ice cream sound a lot since Jordan says he hates it. Jordan hates ice cream? I think we can't allow him in the studio. That's crazy. Who hates ice cream? What a monster, you're right. What a monster. By the way, Jordan Yule's awesome. He's not a monster at all. Calm Like a Bomb says $50,000 to $300,000 depending on the size of the compactor. So like 3 seconds of traffic on Amazon. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they can't be bothered to replace equipment that they know is faulty. Look at what's happening in California with PG&E, which is the major utility here. They have started so many wildfires that have devastated communities, killed lots of people. And it's because they had faulty equipment that they hadn't updated for literally 100 years. I'm not kidding. And Gavin Newsom bailed them out, so that's nice. Jacinda Dragon, resub for 2 months. Thank you for that. And Jacinda says, Anna, my sister just had to put, no, don't tell me this. Just had to put her sweet, gentle rescue puppy Ollie down last night. And I was hoping you could just send love to Jolene because she really needs it right now. Because of her, he got to experience real love and joy and he will be missed. My heart goes out to you guys. My heart goes out to your sister. I can't imagine how difficult that is. I haven't had that happen to me personally yet. My parents actually just had to put their dog of 17 years down. It was like about a month ago actually, and they're still struggling. It's very difficult. So I really feel for your sister and send her our love. SK09 says Matt Walsh is gonna be the first patriot on the front line, right? Right. Diamond Joker 23. It was no taxation without representation, not just no taxation. Exactly. Yeah, that's another point. If you don't pay your taxes now and you think that's just good, that's going to be your political protest, the IRS will have a word with you and then your protest will end. That's how it's going to work. So look at Matt Walsh giving people terrible advice that'll probably land him in prison. It's incredible. Kyle 8315 says men will tase another man's ass instead of going to therapy. Yes, yes, that is very true. That is very true. It's Just Vegas says, I agree with Anna. I was a totally different person at 20, as we all are, right? And so I don't like to be too harsh toward people who like, there is a trend of things being unearthed from like decades ago when people were like 20 or in their late teens. Let's just be a little kinder to each other. People do mature, they do grow. All right, let's get back to the show.
created hemorrhoids.
Ice cream.
Yeah, I know you guys are waiting for the beat to drop. I know you are. It's Wednesday, so you're gonna get the best music on the show of the entire week. All right, and thank you to DJ Bart Kyle.
Thank you very much.
Well, how do you want to go by? What's your DJ name?
Sonic Dragon sounds pretty good.
DJ Sonic Dragon.
Or just Sonic Dragon. It was adopted. It was given to me by the Dragon Squad. Thank you. Sonic Dragon is good.
I'm into it. I like it. It's good. All right, well, let's talk about Alex Jones because the Sandy Hook trial continues. This is the trial to determine what he needs to pay in punitive and compensatory damages. And it's not going so well for him, as you can imagine. Alex Jones has decided to flee his own Sandy Hook related trial in a private jet to boycott the trial. Now, this is a trial to determine what he needs to pay the victims of Sandy Hook, the Sandy Hook massacre, because of the fact that he defamed them. He needs to pay compensatory and punitive damages to these families who he, again, defamed. And it hasn't been going so well for him. When he testifies, not a good look. When the parents that he defamed testify, also not a good look for Alex Jones. So he decided, I'm gonna run away from it. And by nature of me running away, the case is obviously gonna go away, right? Except it's not. So he learned about this through New York Times reporter Elizabeth Williamson, who tweeted, "Good morning from Waterbury, Connecticut, for the Alex Jones Sandy Hook damages trial. Rain and at least one big story today. Defendant packed up his entourage and fled on a private jet." Wow, interesting. Private jet for a dude who wanted to file for bankruptcy. Anyway, I'll continue. So not looking likely he'll testify or yell on the courthouse steps today, which we couldn't cover anyway. Pattis, Jones's lawyer, wants to instruct the jury that Jones is chosen to boycott the trial because, in essence, he can't say what he wants because it's against the rules. Judge not having any of that, rightly saying she can't address his thought process. Now look, if I were Alex Jones and I were also a massive piece of garbage, I probably wouldn't enjoy sitting there listening to all the testimony. I wouldn't enjoy being cross-examined by the plaintiff's attorney. It would suck, it really would. But you know, most people don't go out of their way to make money and earn profits through defaming victims who had lost their little children in a mass shooting. Only, sociopaths are into that. So the sociopath had a difficult time handling what was transpiring during a trial where he absolutely deserves everything that's been happening to him. And there was some testimony that I think is worth sharing with you just recently, featuring Mark Barden. Mark Barden lost his little boy, Daniel, in the Sandy Hook shooting. And he testified about the kinds of threats he received, he and his family received as a result of Alex Jones defaming them and saying that they're crisis actors, that the Sandy Hook shooting wasn't real, that it was a false flag. Again, imagine having a child who dies as a result of a terrible, tragic mass shooting. That's bad enough. But rather than receive sympathy, you receive an unending wave of harassment and death threats toward you and your family. And that's what he's been dealing with. And some of the threats had to do with his son's grave, literal grave. And he testifies about that in the next video.
Our little Natalie had learned of one of the letters that came to our mailbox that said they were going to dig up Daniel's grave. And to hear that people were desecrating it and urinating on it and threatening to dig it up. I don't know how to articulate to you what that feels like, but that's where we are.
Imagine urinating on a 7-year-old's grave because a piece of garbage you listen to has somehow convinced you that a mass shooting was fake. It was a phony hoax. I can't imagine having that kind of mind, that kind of brain that justifies doing that to anyone's grave. But think about it, 7-year-old boy slaughtered in a mass shooting, and they think it's a good idea to do this? They were threatening to dig up his grave. Alex Jones is one of the worst people in this country. Just no remorse for what he did, no shame whatsoever, has decided to use the trial. I mean, not anymore because he's now boycotting it. I mean, use the trial to promote his show and the nonsense supplements that he had been slanging on his show, Instahard, whatever it is. No shame. I can't imagine being so disconnected from reality and so sociopathic that the only thing that matters to you is just making more money off of other people's tragedies and off of defaming other people, off of defaming victims, defaming parents who lost their children in a mass shooting. I can't imagine that, but he exists. This is who he is. And he's got a massive audience that loves him, that latches onto every word, who think he's some sort of patriot. Really? Patriots go around terrorizing fellow Americans after they've lost their children in a mass shooting? That's what they do? After Daniel's death, Mark Barden posted a video online of himself and his 3 kids playing What a Wonderful World. They actually performed that for their grandfather. Daniel was on the drums and kept really good time, he testified. The video was soon flooded with comments threatening the family and calling them actors. In fact, they got into that during the trial. I want to give you a few examples. Let's watch.
My only question is, who do you serve, Barden family? God sees all. Sure, I'm scared for our country, but I'm even more worried about the souls of the corrupt. Do yourself a favor and confess your misdeeds. LOL. This is so fake. They don't even remember what year their son died in. You couldn't possibly support a family on that guitar playing, dude. The whole thing is as phony as a $3 bill. Such a coincidence that so many of these parents are wannabe musicians and wannabe actors. Quote, our kids died, so please give us all money. LOL. You have a nice comment here. And then right under it, 2 years ago. What a sick charade. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
This is what they do. This is what they do. That's why I don't post anything about my family on social media anymore. Because they swarm in and say disgusting, abusive things about your family members, about your personal life, even if it's a sweet, wholesome video, as was the case here with Barden's family, with his children performing a song for their grandfather on his birthday. I again, have a difficult time understanding, valuing money that much that you knowingly engage in causing pain and suffering toward people who are already struggling with the loss of their dead children. And that's who Alex Jones is. He doesn't care. Again, no remorse. And I'm curious what happens. I mean, ordinary people don't get to just boycott their trial. Oh, this is an inconvenience. I'm uncomfortable. I'm gonna boycott it. He should just be in jail at this point. Honestly, this guy does not give a damn about the law. He doesn't care about the path of destruction he has left behind and continues to move forward with. This is just who he is. And I wanna know, like, how far can he go? Really, can anyone just hop onto a private jet and decide, I'm gonna boycott my trial? Give the judge the middle finger, call her all sorts of insane names. That's what he's been doing. He's not supposed to talk about the court proceedings. He does it all the time. He breaks every rule. And so far, the only consequence I've seen is the default ruling on defamation because he refused to cooperate with the trial. But at some point, if he's gonna keep communicating to everyone that he thinks he's above the law, shouldn't someone let him know that he isn't above the law? Or is it just gonna keep going on this way? He's just so gross. And I will never, ever backtrack or reverse what I said about him getting banned on various platforms. Free speech is important. Inciting violence toward victims of a mass shooting, not protected speech under any circumstance, even in our Constitution. So cry me a goddamn river about how he's not on Twitter anymore. Don't care. Got to take a break. When we come back, Jordan Yuill will be here. We'll talk about some more stories, including a suspicious cop death in Los Angeles. They claim that it was an accident. He might have been beaten up by his own police officers. We've got that story and more coming right up.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries. Yeah. She's like, these aren't real berries at all. I'm like, I got news for you. Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
I Am Sock says the control room needs to hit the ice cream sound a lot since Jordan says he hates it.
Oh, I can, and I will. Ice cream.
everyone. Anna Kasparian and Jordan Yule's here.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
This is exciting.
First time here.
Yeah, it's the first time we're hosting together in person.
Right.
I've been on your Twitch stream before, which was fun, but it's nice. It's like a different energy to have you here. But you don't like ice cream, so I feel like you should be banned.
I like ice cream. I think that sound is really creepy. And
oh, the whisper ice cream sound?
It's a little,
totally.
It's a bit much.
I know, it is, and I love it because it's so out of the blue. I remember the first time, because we gotta play the royalty-free music, right?
Sure.
And sometimes you get a little surprise, like a weird, whispery ice cream woman.
Yeah, not my favorite, but I'll deal with it.
What was the other thing that you hate that I do a lot?
Shoulder shimmies.
Shoulder shimmies. I do love a good shoulder shimmy. I'll try to keep that under control today.
We could save it for the bonus episode.
Sure. All right, well, let's get to some of the news today because there's a suspicious death in the LAPD that should probably be investigated, and I'm unsure whether they are investigating it. So I want to give you the circumstances of this cop's death, and then you can maybe decide for yourself whether or not you think it's a little suspicious. A lawyer for a former LAPD, Los Angeles Police Department officer allegedly killed during a training exercise, is actually now claiming that the cop had been investigating a gang rape that had allegedly been committed by 4 other LAPD officers. And on the day that he died during this alleged freak accident, training accident, one of the cops who was being investigated was there. And let's just also mention that we're talking about a cop who was young, healthy, had no issues. The idea that he died during a freak training accident seems strange considering that never happens. You never hear about that happening. It could happen, but it just seemed strange from the beginning. But now we're learning more. So here is attorney Bradley Gage. He's the attorney for the police officer's family, the police officer who passed away. He's at a press conference earlier this week and he's explaining what he thinks is going on here.
There was reportedly an incident report taken by Officer Houston Tipping of a sexual assault, including an object placed into the woman's private areas. According to the investigation carried out so far, the individuals responsible for that alleged sexual assault were supposedly LAPD officers. Even more shocking, our investigation has uncovered claims that one of the officers accused of sexual assault was at the training where Officer Houston Tipping eventually died.
So we, Jordan, know how police react to one of their own, even speaking out against something that they've done. Mm-hmm. The idea of a fellow police officer serving as a whistleblower or investigating them for a gang rape, I'm sure they wouldn't take kindly to. One of the cops was there at the training with him when he allegedly died from a training incident. I don't know. I mean, look, it's all we can do at this moment is speculate, but I'm curious what you think so far.
It seems fishy.
Yeah.
It seems totally fishy. There have been hundreds of instances just over the past decade of whistleblowers within police departments who have experienced documented retaliation from their coworkers, colleagues. And it speaks to this insider culture in police departments that for them, it protects wrongdoing for bad cops. But if you're on the outside and you're a victim of a bad cop, it insulates them from any accountability. And police unions and the way they are structured really help perpetuate this injustice. They are able to extend a review period before any investigation begins, and that allows them to get their story straight. That allows them to create a lie and just go with it. If you are a member of the general public, what justice can you find in that? And at the end of the day, if you do get a settlement, it just comes out of your pocket anyway.
Yep.
In your tax dollars. So this whole thing smells, and it speaks to this pervasive culture of corrupt cops in this country.
So I want to give you guys a little more detail into what the police department is saying happened and some of the other elements of the story that seem sketchy. So Houston Tipping was the name of this 32-year-old police officer who died, okay? In a May 31st news release, the LAPD said that Houston Tipping fell on the floor while grappling with another officer during a training scenario, which caused a catastrophic spinal cord injury. After the injury, officers started CPR and hailed paramedics who took Tipping to a hospital. Okay, so that could happen, right? So that story, I think a lot of people would buy, but then you learn a few more details, okay? So at a July news conference, Gage, that's the attorney we heard from earlier, showed reporters MRI scans revealing that Tipping had staples in his head due to the injuries he sustained leading up to his death. Gage also cited sworn declarations from a nurse and a paramedic, and alleged that Tipping had suffered spinal cord injuries, a collapsed lung, broken ribs, and liver damage consistent with being fatally beaten. I should also note, there's no video of their training. So how convenient, right? Let me continue. The beating left him a quadriplegic and unable to breathe on his own. He actually ended up dying 3 days later when his family made the decision to take him off life support because he wasn't gonna get better. Additionally, the autopsy found broken ribs that appear to be a Lucas device, which is an automatic CPR machine. The problem with that is other medical reports show the Lucas device was never used, Gage said. So I guess there might have been an attempt to cover up the fact that he had broken ribs by saying that it was actually the device, but they hadn't used that device. And now Tipping's lawyer believes there was a motive behind the alleged attack. Even though a coroner's report ruled Tipping's death an accident, attorney Brad Gage says he was targeted because he was a whistleblower in an assault case involving other officers. Gage claims that the alleged assault happened 10 months before Tipping's death. And Gage also says that one of the officers Tipping was investigating was there at the time of this training, at the time of his death. One more video from the attorney.
We have the witness statement from the victim that corroborates the claims under penalty of perjury, and the female victim claimed that she was raped by 4 different people, all LAPD officers. She knew the names of some of those officers because they were in uniform and they had their name tags on. And that name of one of those officers with the name tag seems to correlate with one of the officers that was at the bicycle training.
And you're alleging that that officer is the one who hurt Houston Tipping?
Correct.
I mean, I'm scared that this isn't gonna be investigated. Like, I'm glad that the family got an attorney. I'm glad it's getting a little bit of attention. This is terrifying though.
It's horrifying. And for what the victim suffered, for what that family is going through, it speaks to the many ways that police misconduct affects us in our communities. And again, on the settlement point, if anybody in this situation sees any sort of justice, it just goes against the expense of the taxpayers. So it's really frustrating this keeps happening. And like I mentioned earlier, hundreds of cases just in the past decade of whistleblowers within police departments who, however you feel about the police, if you want to go in and actually be a good cop, and that's what you experience just trying to blow the whistle on wrongdoing, it says really just how hard, if not impossible it is to be a good cop in this system. It's disheartening, and I think it speaks to much broader, serious, complex issues.
Absolutely. I remember in the summer of 2020 when the BLM protests were happening, someone I know who happens to be a cop, some cops were kneeling and to make a point about like, we support you guys, and she happened to be one of them. She was reprimanded by the police department later. So the culture is very much real. And I think a lot needs to change with policing. I mean, the fact that nothing's really been done legislatively with police reform is incredibly frustrating because communities don't trust cops. And if you're dealing with crime and you need help, but you don't trust the cops, you're screwed. You don't know what to do. And I think that a lot of that is going on right now, and we need to do away with qualified immunity. We need to do away with the system that has the taxpayers pay on behalf of bad cops when there are these settlements. It should come out of their own damn pockets. Or I don't know, maybe even the union. Maybe the union needs to pay that settlement, right?
Right. It just, I mean, we could spend the entire hour, if not more, talking about all the different problems with the police.
Exactly.
And everything from, like you mentioned, qualified immunity to civil asset forfeiture to just straight up police brutality. Just extrajudicial killings happening without any repercussions whatsoever. I think, there's been a lot of discussions in the progressive world and the broader democratic world about how we handle it. And whether it's defunding or abolition or restructuring or reforming, whatever, people just want something.
Yes.
And we've seen nothing, and Biden suggests funding the police even more. So kind of yanking my hair out, just wondering when anything, even the slightest thing, will change.
Throwing money at an endless problem doesn't make the problem go away. You have to reform how that system works. Just again, throwing money at it just means that more of our resources go towards something that's already failing us. All right, well, why don't we take a quick break? When we come back, we'll talk about Ron Johnson and how delusional he is about the difference between Democrats and Republicans. Hilarious. And later in the show, we'll lighten things up by talking about a very manly Pete Buttigieg. Come right back.
Ice cream.
Welcome to our social break. Just want to show some love to our super chats. I haven't read any yet. Stocky Bulldog says, how about the top Amazon execs go inhale the stinky smoke and risk their lives in toxic fumes for $15 an hour and see how they like it? First of all, thank you for that comment. That was great. But it reminded me of a comment I read earlier from Gabby Marita, where she was asking, like, with all the profits that Amazon's bringing in, like, how could they not afford to pay their workers $15 an hour? Actually, because of Bernie Sanders pressuring Amazon, they ended up increasing their wages to $15 an hour. That's the minimum, right? But they also did something really shady at the same time. They used to give their employees stock options, which is worth a lot, right? They stopped doing that. They're like, fine, we'll pay you $15 an hour. No more stock options. Sorry. They're so gross. It's unbelievable. Let's go to Michael, who says, help me understand how we came to live under a government so broken that in a 51-50 Senate, it still takes an overwhelming majority to pass anything. One senator can still derail a president's whole agenda. It's purposely designed that way. And I think it's obvious it's purposely designed that way when Democrats could easily do away with that and they want to maintain it. It's a convenient excuse for them for not actually passing the agenda they campaign on. I think that's what's really going on. Let's go to Ray Russell, who says, Anna Jordan, hypothetically, if someone with a YouTube channel wanted nothing more than to join the Rebel HQ channel, what could that person do? I'll tag you on Twitter as soon as the show's over. I don't make programming decisions, so don't at me, bro. But honestly, I don't know. I will ask though if there's like some way of submitting content and then decisions are made that way. But yeah, that's someone else's job and I don't get involved with that. But I'll try to help you out as much as I can. How Blair you says, Jordan, is it true what they say that when they offer you ice cream, you say nay? No way, I smell a debate.
I don't dislike ice crean. I just don't like that sound.
The people are saying. Okay, fine. What's your favorite ice cream?
Depends. There's a Ben & Jerry's. It's like the dulce de leche cookie, but it's with sunflower butter or sunflower milk.
Oh.
It's awesome. I'm not a big milk fan, but that's really good.
Yeah, I think most humans probably shouldn't be milk fans. Milk is not, it's not good for us.
Right.
It doesn't, you know. But ice cream, I think it's worth it.
I will make an exception for that,
Yes.
just not the sound.
All right, we've got Steph Will. Thank you so much for your super chat. We've got 24 seconds left, so let me read some more comments. Special thanks to our YouTube members. We've got Snack Panther, who says the Los Angeles Predator Department. I mean, they're bad, but the Sheriff's Department is also awful. They're two different entities, and they both have massive, massive issues, including gang affiliations with the Sheriff's Department. Anyway, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to the show. Anna Kasparian and Jordan Yule with you. Jordan, where can people find all the amazing work you're doing?
On Tuesdays, I'm on Twitch, Deep Dive here on TYT, Rebel HQ, and on Twitter at Jordan Yule.
You got a podcast too, right?
I do. It's called The Insurgents, and a Substack called I Hate It Here and Never Want to Leave. I'm pretty busy.
You gotta plug all your stuff.
Yeah,
you gotta do it. You gotta do it. All right. Well, why don't we dunk on a Republican senator who certainly deserves it, Ron Johnson. It's just, I can't believe these words came out of his mouth. So, Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson was recently speaking with Hugh Hewitt, who names their child Hugh? Like, I think that needs to be adjudicated. Like, we need to address that at some point. We'll get to that later. But Ron Johnson has some thoughts about freedom and which party actually fosters it in America. Let's watch.
We're conservative, so we really are the live and let live party. Yeah, I really don't care what you do. I really, as long as you're not infringing on somebody else's freedom, as long as you're not harming somebody else. I mean, you go live your life, and that's fine. I'm not going to impose the way I live my life on somebody else, but that is, you're exactly right. That is what the left does, which is what is so annoying about the left.
That it's annoying about the left, Jordan, that we force our religious values, our thoughts about reproductive rights, all our thoughts about who should and shouldn't get married, what kind of sex people should have in the intimacy of their own homes. Like, it's the left that does that, right?
Of course, of course.
It's amazing.
He's out of his mind. This is somebody who is on tape saying he just said he initially supported this marriage equality bill in Congress. This is a fight we now need to have because of conservatives in this country. But he said he supported it because he wanted to get people off his back. Then a few weeks later, he said he doesn't. He said climate change is BS. And to that end, a bunch of climate activists made I don't know if you saw this, but a sculpture made out of cow manure and drug it around Wisconsin last week.
Oh, I did
because
not
he said
see
climate
that.
change is BS, and that's obviously not true. And it's just obviously on his comments, it just shows how they will spin everything they're doing and project everything they're doing on the Democrats. Because at the end of the day, he supports this attack on reproductive freedoms. He supports the Dobbs decision. That's what they want. And now people lose individual rights and freedoms and bodily autonomy. And that is Republicans exacting their will on other people and saying, my religious values are now how you must live your life. And that's just patently wrong.
What I'm always impressed by, I'll use the word impressed, is how they can lie about things with such a straight face and also without providing a shred of evidence to back up their argument. So there was nothing provided in that argument to, I guess, bolster what he's saying. I thought, oh, maybe he might get into, oh, the left wants to censor comedians. I don't know, maybe something. No, he didn't even go there because there's nothing. I mean, parents are getting investigated for providing gender affirming care to their transgender children in Texas. Why is it Texas's business how parents decide to respond to the fact that their children have identified as transgender? Like, I think the parents are better suited to make that decision along with their children. But no, they're being investigated. They're threatening to take kids away from their parents if they're kind enough to take their transgender kid to therapy if they feel like they might need therapy. That's insane. That is insane. That is forcing whatever bigoted, disgusting political beliefs you have about transgender people onto others. We've already talked about the abortion thing. I mean, women not having the ability to make decisions about their own bodies in huge portions of this country, that's not something the left did. That's something the right has been fighting for over the last 50 years. Carrie Lake, Republican running for governor in Arizona, she made the grave mistake of saying abortions should be legal but rare, something along those lines. That she said that recently because she was thinking about extreme cases, right? Rape, incest, the mother's life is in danger. Conservatives jumped down, like they attacked her, okay? Just jumped her immediately. And she's like, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. No. We should have this. Do you watch House of the Dragon?
No.
Okay, never mind. Let's move on.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, it's just weird medieval garbage that they force on all of us. And then they have like the gall to say, but we believe in freedom, everybody.
Right. I hope this hurts them in November. I really hope it does. Because even some of the more center-leaning conservatives don't agree with this. And I really hope they show up and vote with their heart. Because that used to be what people would just check the box for.
Yeah.
There were a ton of single-issue voters who would vote conservative just because they wanted, restrictive abortion measures. So I really hope that people see through this, because once it became a little too real for people, you started seeing a wave of voter registration. You started to see public opinion polling shift. You started to see a wave of activism and a flood of donations. People really started to think about, this got really serious really fast. So I really hope that people talk to your friends and family who are conservative and who don't agree with the Dobbs decision and don't think that a nationwide abortion ban is something we should have, and really just try to convince them to get out and vote, because that is something that is totally within reach. If we get a bigger Senate majority and control the House, we can absolutely codify Roe. It is within reach, but if we sit out, we're only guaranteed for this to get worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but to be fair to Republicans, they do have an important rallying cry about furries, and
that's equally important.
Yeah, totally. All right, well, I never thought I would say this, but we've got a story involving manliness and Pete Buttigieg. Let's get to it.
Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Georgia Republican at a rally in Michigan, said this past weekend that Mr. Buttigieg is trying to emasculate the way we drive by, as she goes on to explain, by supporting environmentally friendly transportation. But what did you think of her wording?
I literally don't even understand what that means.
That was the right way to respond to just nonsense coming from the most nonsensical member of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene. The idea that your masculinity should hinge on whether or not your vehicle uses gasoline is insane, okay? But I do want to go to the rest of that interaction and get your thoughts, Jordan. Let's watch.
My sense of manhood is not connected to whether my vehicle is fueled by gasoline or whether it's fueled by electricity. This is a practical matter.
Were you offended by that, sir? Because even people who, share her politics didn't share that view.
It was a strange thing to say. To be honest, there are other members of Congress that I pay more attention to when I'm thinking about opinions that really matter or ideas that are going to be critical to engage with.
I'll say one last thing about this. I love the instigator tone. Yeah. Like, were you offended? Like interrupting him as he's talking. Were you offended? Were you offended? Were you offended? Say you were offended. No, it doesn't seem like he's offended. It seems like he thinks Marjorie Taylor Greene's a joke.
And she is, and that is, I think, however you feel about Pete, I didn't care for him in the primary. Yeah. But that was just, it felt a lot like she was attacking his sexuality and his identity. It was very weird.
100%.
Part of it's about he's supporting the development and expansion of electric vehicles, which is a good thing and has nothing to do with whether you are masculine or not. I don't care. I'm not a car person in general.
Same.
But these are the same people that were just whining about gas prices. And she also, I went back to look at her clip where she said that, and she was talking about how a real masculine person drives a V8 Ford Mustang or a big truck. And go for it, but don't complain when gas prices spike. You're just burning through your money, I guess, to make yourself seem tougher. I've never gotten car culture in general.
Yeah.
It just seems out of my league.
I mean, I kind of get it if you're into mechanics and you love building cars. I can see it as a hobby. I can understand people who are into it. But what I don't understand, and this is a broader point that goes beyond vehicles and like masculinity related to vehicles. Have you ever once in your life gone around looking at people and judging like their masculinity? Like my brain doesn't operate that way. Like hello, nice to meet you. Are you masculine enough? Like I don't think that way. It's weird. It's very weird.
It is bizarre. And in relation to cars, when I see a guy driving a giant truck with huge wheels, that to me is just like a cry for help. Just like, give me a Miata. Like I'll tell.
Yeah, no, zoom, hell yeah. No, I love small compact cars. Easier to park, easier to deal with.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of, like I have a used Honda Civic, and the reason why I love my used Honda Civic is every time it gets a dent or a scuff, I'm like, it's a used Honda Civic. It's great. Gets me to point A to point B. I'm happy. But yeah, for people who like it, they like it. You know, I like things that I'm sure other people don't like, and so I can understand that. But it has nothing to do with masculinity. So conservatives like Green have been at Buttigieg's throat for a comment he actually made last August about the high gas prices and how electric vehicles might be a good solution in response to high gas prices. He said that the best thing we can do for the medium and long term is make sure Americans have more options through greater fuel efficiency and greater access to vehicles that don't require gasoline at all, so that Americans don't have to worry about what's happening in some Middle Eastern capital or foreign war zone. And that's exactly right. I think when the war in Ukraine started and there was all this panic about gas prices, my issue was why do we wait for a war to happen to panic about the gas prices? We could have had a system in place already where we were more reliant on renewable energy, that like gas prices going up wouldn't be as big of an issue because there wouldn't be as much demand for gas to begin with. And also like no one really talked about this, but Biden tucking tail to go meet with the leader of Venezuela and like, can you please produce more gas? I love that. And no one wanted to talk about that. It's like, I know that I said Juan Guaido is the actual leader of this country because I wanted the coup to work, but can you produce more gas? Like, wouldn't it be great if we were in a position where we didn't have to do that?
Yeah, I mean, even going to meet with the Saudis just a couple weeks ago. And did you, I mean, I'm sure as you saw, they're just going to reduce production. So it didn't even work.
Yep.
But that's just the nature of Congress. They're reactionary, and our government in general. It's always reacting to issues, and very seldom is it ever proactive. I think Buttigieg got a lot of flack for the electric vehicles comment, and I get it. Like they are expensive for a lot of people, and they're out of reach for a lot of people. But what he was saying was, long term, we need to think about this as part of a sustainable future, and that's right. That's absolutely right. We're just not there yet, and it is a bit out of reach for people. So
yes, and thank you for bringing that up. I've talked about that on the show before. I think Buttigieg was careful in his wording because he talked about medium and long term. He didn't say immediately, and a lot of people can't afford electric vehicles, and it's especially if you're living in a big city that's insanely expensive, and so you've had to move like 2 hours away from your job just to be able to live, right? Just to be able to pay your rent. The idea of using an electric vehicle to get to and from work every day is difficult. I get that. And so yeah, we need to build the infrastructure necessary. There needs to be more affordable options for fuel efficient vehicles for folks. All of that is true. But that doesn't take away from the fact that our over-reliance on fossil fuels is a detriment to all of us and our planet, you know? So, and that has nothing to do with masculinity, nothing. And I don't know, do I want to hit below the belt? Maybe, I do, I'm gonna do it. I don't want to hear any thoughts or advice on masculinity from a woman whose marriage just fell apart. Not interested. You know, maybe a little self-reflection. Anyway.
It's just, it has no place in politics. Her comments in general were just pandering to this pure distillation of the American id, and really bizarre stuff that I can't believe is so common and so amplified now. I can't stand it.
It's really gross. It truly is. We got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including what Republicans have pivoted to in their campaigning to increase their numbers. And unfortunately, it appears to be working to some extent, especially in Senate races, like the one between Mehmet Oz and John Fetterman. So we'll talk about that and more coming right up. Don't miss it.
Ice cream.
Welcome back to our social break. Not a Dragon says the right-wing sense of manhood is directly proportional to their intake of Viagra. Dude, the one thing that I will say about Mexico, every time I go there, if you're with a man, I was with my husband, everyone offers you Viagra, like endlessly. Viagra like what is it with Mexico and Viagra? It's everywhere.
I think it speaks to our healthcare system.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's a really, really good point.
They just know it sucks. It's like, all right, this is probably what you want.
It was everywhere, oh my God. All right, by the way, we did buy some pharmaceutical drugs in Mexico, because how could we not? It's so affordable compared to what we're dealing with in the United States, so why not take advantage? Not Viagra, we're good. Anyway, let's move on. Amber Rose Colored Dragon says, poor Jordan should never have told us that he doesn't like that creepy whisper.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Okay, Sea Prince Reborn Dragon resubbed with Prime for 3 months and says, I love that Jordan is gonna get creeped out the entire show, and also that he got dressed up for the occasion. Love you guys. Twitch community is the best community. Nice, thank you.
I'm wearing my dress flannel tonight.
I love it. You know, I feel like sometimes John schleps it on the show.
Schleps it?
Yeah. Sometimes you're looking good. No, I like it. I like it. The thing with John is he set the bar high with being Johnny Ty for a while, and then all of a sudden he would do the main show with me like wearing a t-shirt and sweats, and I'd be like, what happened?
That's not something you can come back from.
Exactly.
If you make that your brand, it's just, you're stuck.
Yep. 100%.
I'm thinking long term.
Bradshaw Crew 1 says, who names a guy Hugh when their last name is Hewitt? Well, that's the thing. Hugh Hewitt kind of has a good ring to it, but like Hugh is a weird name.
Yeah.
Like his parents decided Hugh, we're gonna go with Hugh. I don't know, it's weird. Let's go to Nerdopithecus, who says, how am I to be expected to drive a car that doesn't have hairy testicles? I don't know. People want to know. YouTube members, Lorraine Hart became a member. Thank you so much. Burning Knuckles says, cop kill cops that don't fall in line. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the suspicion here. James Call says, end qualified immunity now. All lawsuits should be paid from the officers. That would shut a lot of this down. I know, exactly. We heard a lot about how Democrats were gonna reform policing prior to the 2020 election. None of that happened. 0% of that happened, and it's infuriating. Tabby Sonic Dragon in the house. That's
Thank you very much.
Doodoo Bean says she wants cars. Oh yeah, I read that already. Let's move over to some super chats. Sorry guys, this document is incredibly long and every day I'm stressed out for not reading every single comment. So eclectic miscellanea in our member comments. I'm gonna read it when we get back in the show. We ran out of time. Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and Jordan with you. Eclectic Miscellanea in our members section, who's also known as Zombie Ice Dragon, says, congrats to Anna and everyone at TYT for passing 22 billion views. Billion with a B. The mainstream media wants to silence progressive voices, but together we're too strong. So it takes a lot of work. I mean, every show you watch on the network, it takes a village. It takes a village, but it's usually a tiny, tiny group of people, a handful of people who make it possible, working around the clock. And so they deserve love, support. I couldn't do what I do without my team. But I do want to give a shout out to Cenk, because he's the crazy person who has always believed he could do this. He's been met with so many doubters, so many people who told him, get out of here. And he's succeeded in an incredibly difficult line of work. Like, the media landscape is brutal. And I remember all of these big name digital media networks, like Maker Studio. Do you remember that, Maker Studio?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, and there were other ones that like, yeah, that. There was another like multi-channel network back in the day. Anyway, they all failed. And they all got like massive infusions of cash from like Disney and stuff like that. But Cenk's still standing, so it makes me really proud, really happy about that.
It speaks to, yeah, his commitment and also the work that everyone's put in here.
Yes.
Because how many pivots to video have we seen over the past just decade alone? Yeah. All of these companies were going to enter this space, and it shows even the biggest ones that failed how difficult this is.
Yeah.
So it's really impressive, and the people who have worked here or work here now, just a credit to all of them. That is no small feat.
Now let's move on to people we don't like and what they're up to. And that's the Republican Party and the kind of campaigning messaging they're leaning on to win elections.
This seat is very important, that they'll do anything to win this seat, lie, because they want to make it by everything else except what the true problems that we have in this country is. This inflation, the border wide open, crime.
Herschel Walker, following the big abortion scandal he was involved in, has decided to really lean into his anti-crime messaging. And that's really no surprise. He's running for a Senate seat in Georgia. And if you look at the political landscape right now and all of these various elections, you'll notice a repetition of the same anti-crime messaging from these Republican candidates. And I bring this up because we should be a little concerned. It seems to be working in some cases, especially when you look at the polls between Mehmet Oz and John Fetterman. Fetterman still has a lead, but Oz, even with all of these terrible stories coming out about him and how his company did terrible abusive testing on dogs, he's starting to close that lead that Fetterman has over him. And I think it's because he keeps repeating this crime messaging. Now, the Republican National Committee has tweeted out a near daily update of crimes and crime statistics in the Philadelphia area. On Tuesday, it shared footage of a carjacking at a Philadelphia gas station and highlighted that there have been more than 1,000 carjackings in the city this year. So this is very much something that is supported by the Republican establishment, this pivot toward crime messaging. And I want to focus on the Fetterman race a little bit and then go to you, Jordan. So in Pennsylvania, Republicans are seizing on high-profile incidents in the Philadelphia area, including the recent ransacking of a Wawa store at the shooting of 5 students outside a high school last month. Democratic Senate nominee John Fetterman, the state's lieutenant governor, has been forced to play defense by, this is not good, erasing statements of support for Black Lives Matter from his website. So playing defense is never good. And Democrats tend to play defense, and I hate that. I would like to see more offense from them. And to be fair, Fetterman has been doing a great job. He does play offense, and that is very important. But if you look at the polling, it seems like this strategy is working a little bit for Dr. Oz. Let's go to graphic 5. The strategy appears to be paying off as the Republican candidate for Senate in Pennsylvania, Mehmet Oz, has gained some ground in the polls over the last 2 weeks. On Tuesday, the Cook Political Report, which in August shifted the race from toss-up to lead Democratic, moved it back to its toss-up column. I want to get your thoughts, Jordan, because honestly, I've been warning about this and I've been seeing it. I saw it from a mile away. I knew it was going to come to this. And my plea to Democrats was, don't try to like outdo Republicans on being tough on crime. This is a great opportunity to empathize with victims of crime and offer something different and better. And I haven't really seen that. I've actually seen a lot of Democrats running away from this issue or trying to pretend like there isn't a crime wave at all.
Well, Democrats like to govern from a position of fear. And I think that really infects their campaigns too, because a lot of people just bounce around between campaign and office or organization, whatever. And it's frustrating when you see moments like this when they are very clearly just picking outliers and trying to sensationalize them. Because it's reminiscent of that Willie Horton style ad where they're just hyping these things up to scare people. But if you really look at it, and I did some research before I came here because I wanted to see where, especially in these states, what are the crime rates and how do they compare to other states? And would you be surprised if you heard that out of the top 10 states with the highest murder rates, 8 of them are red states? Like they're not really concerned about any of this.
Yeah.
If they were, they would be doing the same things about their own states.
1000%. No, let me be clear about one thing, just in case anyone might misconstrue what I'm saying or thinking. No, Republicans don't care about the crime wave at all. But it is about how they campaign and how they message. And so when there is a crime wave and people are concerned about it, they're gonna think that the candidate who pretends to care about it actually does care about it. You get what I'm saying? So that's why I'm saying, if they're gonna attack Democrats on this issue, it's really important for the Democratic candidates to get out in front of it and say, listen, this is a problem, we recognize it, here's what we're gonna do about it. And they should offer up solutions that are very different from what we've done in the past and what we're currently doing today, right?
I mean, I don't even think it's this unique problem. We've had crime, we unfortunately will have crime, no one likes it. They try to frame Democrats as not only just being soft on crime, but wanting more of this. And these ads are just hysterical. And I just think we unfortunately, and it's the nature of our politics, we can't really have a nuanced conversation about this issue.
No, we can't.
So unfortunately, it's sound bites, it's just 30-second ads, it's tweets. But ideally, I'd love to see him say, okay, lay out every single aspect of a reinvestment in our community, meet some people's material needs, meet some people's mental health needs, meet some people's health, just regular general health needs, all of these things together, an investment in education and preventative care, all of these things that really would help lower the crime rate. We can't do that. Our system is so fundamentally broken, we cannot do that.
That's right.
So I don't really accept that we just have this unique crime wave that we have to address and deal with within the context of a campaign with Oz or within the context of a campaign with Herschel Walker, because they're not reasonable, rational actors.
No, they're not, but you could use that to your advantage, right? So, I mean, look, if I were running against someone like Oz, I'd be like, great, let's have a debate about the crime wave. Let's do it. I wanna have a debate about the crime wave. I wanna hear your solutions. What are your solutions? Because they have no solutions, right? If we know that they're bad faith actors, if we know that they're not actually concerned about this issue, then create a situation in which you can call them out on it, call them out and watch them stutter and struggle to answer a question about issues that they keep bringing up themselves, right? That's what I would like to see. And I do think, look, I think Fetterman, from what I've seen from him in relation to crime related issues, right? No, he has the right idea. He's like, our prisons are overflowing with people who shouldn't be there, people who are not being rehabilitated. If anything, they're turning into hardened criminals by the nature of being in these institutions. He wants to clean the records of people who have ever been prosecuted for marijuana possession, which makes all the sense in the world if you ask me. It's insane that in much of the country you could just legally buy weed, not even for medicinal reasons, just because you want to smoke weed. Right? And other parts of the country, you'll still go to prison for it. It's insane. So I think he has the right ideas. I think he's a smart guy. I don't think he needs to run from this. I don't think he needs to erase things from his website. I think he should politically punch him in the face the way he's been doing on every other issue and succeeding at, you know?
Don't meet him where he's at.
Yeah.
You have the upper hand. The polling show, he's still up by 4%. It's not, the most comfortable position to be in. Things can change, but he's still up, and it's because He has a good platform.
Yep.
Oz doesn't have a platform. It just he wants to privatize Medicare Advantage and universalize private Medicare Advantage.
Insane.
In what world does that make sense? That's such an easy debate to win.
Oh my God, no one wants that.
No.
Republican voters don't want that.
Yeah, well, Wall Street wants it.
Exactly. So have him repeat that he wants that,
Yeah.
that he's pushing for that. I mean, anyway, but you're right. Fetterman has been doing great. I think his campaign, for the most part, has been pretty wonderful. And he might be the only Democrat running for office who understands meme culture,
Yeah.
which is great. It's rare.
His digital team is fantastic.
Yeah.
They've been crushing it.
They've been so good. All right, well, let's end on a lighter story, and that's Gigi Hadid calling out Ye. Gigi Hadid and Kanye West, also known as Ye, are in a bit of a tiff. They've been arguing. In fact, she called West a bully and a joke after the rapper and fashion designer, who now again calls himself Ye, insulted Vogue editor Gabriella Carifa Johnson in a series of social media posts. So it all started when Carifa Johnson posted on Instagram this after going to Kanye West's fashion show in France, where he was wearing the White Lives Matter shirt. "I'm fuming," she wrote on her Instagram stories, alongside a video of a black model wearing the shirt on the runway. "Indefensible behavior." Now, for those of you who might have missed the original story we did on this, here is a photo of Candace Owens and Kanye West wearing the White Lives Matter shirts. And I'm very curious what you think about this, Jordan.
I can't. What?
You didn't know about this?
I vaguely. He needs help.
No, I know.
He desperately needs help, but I think he just does things to get attention at this point.
Yep.
Because it's the Elon Musk strategy. After a few days, if you're not in the news cycle, he'll just do, I invented a car that can survive hurricanes. Like, it's just anything he can do to stay in the spotlight. That's just how his mind works, which is really worrying. But he's talked about mental health, and I wanted to separate, that doesn't justify everything he does. It explains some of it, but he really needs people in his world that will just tell him no.
Yes.
And he doesn't seem to have that.
No, he doesn't. He's surrounded by people who enable the worst instincts that he has. I personally don't understand wanting to be in the spotlight ever. Like, it's terrible. And to intentionally do things that are inflammatory or offensive for attention, it blows my mind. But apparently after this Vogue editor had posted that, things kind of, I don't know, unraveled. So he was trying to illustrate a dystopian world in the future when whiteness might become extinct, or at least would be in enough danger to demand defense, she wrote in messages to a friend, screenshotted and shared to Instagram. But the danger is that the very premise, the idea that white supremacy is in danger of extinction is what justifies mass incarceration, murder en masse, indeed, even the advent of slavery. Okay. Now, she called the shirt deeply offensive, violent, and dangerous. So thin-skinned Ye did not like that. Okay, so he kind of responded to that criticism and started his own bullying campaign. In one since deleted post, which featured a photo of what appears to be the stylist out and about, Ye wrote, "Can we just call him Kanye? I can't with the Ye, it's really strange." But anyway, this is what he writes. "This is not a fashion person. You speak on Ye, I'ma speak on you, ask Trevor Noah," okay? He then posted a close-up of her boots and brought in Vogue's Anna Wintour, writing, "I know Anna hates these boots." And then that's when Gigi Hadid got involved, the model. And she says, "You wish you had a percentage of her intellect. You have no idea if there's actually a point to any of your stuff. She might be the only person that could save you. As if the honor of being invited to your show should keep someone from giving their opinion. You're a bully and a joke." I like that statement. I think that's a good statement. I think it's accurate.
It's fair.
Yeah.
I regret ever being a Kanye fan when I was younger.
I was too, but I loved his first album. Everything kind of fell apart at some point. But he wasn't always like this.
No,
right?
that's the thing.
Yeah.
You think back to like late registration.
I know.
It was just night and day from where he is now. He had like the pastel colored polos singing about Jesus. Like,
oh my God.
What happened to that?
I totally forgot about the pastel polos.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that there is something going on with mental health. I'm not an expert. I don't mean to diagnose him in any way, but it's kind of obvious. But at the same time, I've noticed after his mom passed away, that was when things got really bad.
Yeah, I think that the grief, that loss, absolutely would just do damage on anyone who had that close or a significant relationship with their parent, as he says he did. And again, like, we're not saying this explains everything or we're blaming it or even stigmatizing it. It's just that this is something that nobody in his world is encouraging him and supporting him in the process of treating.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. And it speaks to people who are really just in his social circle to get ahead. It's people who are probably just using him for access, for parties, for whatever. And Candace Owens being there isn't really surprising because that is somebody who is just purely opportunistic. So unfortunately for him, he has surrounded himself with people who are only looking out for themselves and won't tell him no because that jeopardizes their access to him in his world.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. It really is, right? Like the opportunism in every field of work, like in every area of American culture is pretty disgusting. And people get hurt as a result of that. Later, he tried to make it seem like, oh no, I met with this Vogue editor, everything's great now. He posted a picture of her on his Instagram page and said that they're all good. I don't know how true that is. I don't really care, to be honest. I just think, everything you said is true. I think that's the right empathetic way of approaching stories involving Kanye West. Now, Candace Owens, that's a different story, right? Candace Owens is the definition of an opportunist.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when Kanye had just a brief moment of clarity about her and they had like a bit of a falling out. I don't know what happened after that. But she loves any opportunity to be in the spotlight, and this is yet another example of that. Like, imagine being a Black woman who dealt with severe racism in high school as a result of being a Black, student, then turning around to wear a White Lives Matter t-shirt. It's insane, but it's the world we live in, I guess. Yeah. All right, well, we've got a bonus episode next. You don't want to miss it. Piers Morgan and Andrew Tate get into a debate. And it's always odd when you find yourself in a situation where Piers Morgan ends up being the better person. So that story and more coming up in the bonus episode, tyt.com/join to become a member, and we'll see you there.